Hi, I'm Jay Burney, and welcome to our show. This is an attempt to keep us connected during a very difficult time that we're going through. The pandemic has gripped our region and indeed much of the globe. Today we're talking with Priscilla and Jonathan Titus. Jonathan is a professor of biology at Fredonia, SUNY, and Priscilla works for the West New York Land Conservancy as a plant ecologist. I've known them both for a long time, and it's a pleasure to have them here today and to see what's going on with the world of ecology and College Lodge, which is a project that the West New York Land Conservancy is trying to protect. So, hi, Priscilla and John. It's good to see you. How are things going in your neck of the woods?
Can't complain. We have jobs, we're healthy, have food, get outdoors.
Yep, things are going pretty well. I think, especially compared to a lot of people who, are definitely trapped indoors and, have fewer options.
We do realize other people are having a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it's a tough time for sure. Jonathan, you have classes still, or are you doing them
Um,
virtually?
Classes are online, and that's been actually proceeding fairly smoothly, but students were not necessarily prepared to go online because that's not what they signed up for. So I do have to have much greater level of flexibility and to definitely keep it as simple as possible in terms of the technology. But
Students, and I assume professors also weren't necessarily as prepared as needed. Well, listen, I know that you're both involved with the College Lodge project at Fredonia. Can you tell us a little bit about that area?
um, well, the College Lodge is an area about 10 miles from Fredonia, and it's up on the Continental Divide, which means that in part of the preserve, the water flows to the Gulf of Mexico, and the other part it flows to Lake Erie. So it's kind of sitting on top, and it's about 200 acres, and it's actually owned by the Faculty Student Association, not by the SUNY Fredonia campus. So the ownership is a little bit different than people suspect. So the lodge has an interesting history because it was purchased by students for students during the Depression. So it has a really long history of lots and lots of student activities and all kinds of things used to go on up there. And so a lot of alumni have very fond memories of the place. So there is a lodge building, and then the rest is forest and marsh and swamps and some really fantastic habitat. There's the largest patch of old growth in the county. It's about 16 acres, and the marsh is extremely high quality, very, very pristine. And then the rest of the forest is varied. There's more than 450 plant species, which is about half the total of the county. And it's also really rich in bird life and amphibian life, which shows the quality of the forest and the vegetation and the marsh. So it's really a wonderful place. It's a beautiful place to walk around. It's got a wonderful trail system, and we've been up there quite a bit recently. A lot of spring ephemerals are flowering right now. So yeah, it's really a wonderful place.
John said it was important to students, but it's also been very important to the local community. Many groups go there, scouts, homeschoolers, artists. There are plein air classes there. People go for hiking. Some very devoted bird watchers go there weekly and make wonderful records of their sightings. There's just all kinds of use of the area by the public at large also.
Well, it's a unique area, certainly, and you mentioned that it's an old growth forest. Tell us, why that's important. Tell us what that is.
So an old growth forest is a forest that essentially has never been subject to major disturbance by humans. So generally, it's old, Many of the trees in the old growth forest are more than 300 years old. And generally, the trees are large, although, of course, old growth forest in a harsh environment, the trees could be small. But some of the trees at the lodge are also pretty big. And what you get with the old growth forest is emergent properties. These are attributes that you don't find in a younger forest. So you'll have a complex, multi-layered canopy, with trees of all different ages. You'll find plant species which you generally do not find in younger forests. And actually, a lot of the most important differences are below ground. So there is a fungal network in all forests, which connects the plant species, and this fungal network, though, which allows trees to communicate with each other, develops over time and becomes much more complex. So you also have a much more complex and diverse ecosystem below ground in the old growth forest. In a younger forest, which is what dominates most of the county, the system is much, much simpler. You don't kind of have that level of communication between the plant species. There are also a number of birds and other animals which you generally only find in old growth forests.
Well, I know that an old growth forest is an incredibly rare ecosystem, not only in Fredonia, not only in your county, but in all of Western New York, all of New York State, and I would say all of the Great Lakes states. So we're very lucky to have this. And Priscilla, maybe you could tell us some more about some of the plants that can be found there, including some of the trees and some of the tree systems, ecosystems.
Oh, there's a diversity of habitat types, but the old growth forest is a hemlock dominated with hardwood tree forest. It's I don't know how to distill this into a quick sound bite. It's very complex. Every week you go there, you will see something different. So right now it's the spring ephemerals. These are the beautiful flowers we see in early spring before the trees have their leaves. And that's because the sunlight reaches the forest floor during this time of year. And these plants are adapted to practically complete their entire life cycle just after the soil warms up and before the trees have fully shaded the forest floor. Once that's complete, we'll start to see different species, understory species, that are adapted to leaves being on the tree, shade tolerant species that come up when the soil is even warmer. The marsh itself has a whole complement of species, aquatic and terrestrial. There are hummocks, there are small forests on islands in the swamp. So it's just a very complex system. That's why we have over 450 plants on the species list, and we're still looking. So one other point I want to make about spring ephemerals and plants in general, our communities here in Western New York, is the impact that invasive species have on those communities. So when, for example, spring ephemerals are waiting for that sunlight to reach the forest floor so that they can complete their life cycle, it's a problem if there's a heavy shrub layer with bush honeysuckle or multi-floret rose, two of our most common invasives. They leaf out earlier in the spring and they prevent that light from getting to the forest floor. So then the spring ephemeral species will drop out. They can't thrive in that environment. And the first time John and I went to the College Lodge, we were amazed at all the spring ephemerals we saw. And if you go out there this spring, you'll see them too, and you'll be amazed. And the main reason for that is though there are some invasive species there, but it's not yet tipped the scale so that the spring ephemerals can't make it. There are very few invasive species there, and they're still controllable. We've been working on them all the years we've lived here. And it's a forest where you can go and visit and you can see what all the forests here used to look like before we changed the system.
It's a pretty incredible place. I've only been there a couple of times, but it's just blown me away when I've gone there. I also know that the West New York Land Conservancy is trying to raise money to purchase the property because it's kind of in trouble in terms of its ownership and management in the future. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, FSA is the that's the Faculty Student Association at SUNY Fredonia. They run, the food service and the bookstore, things like this, and they are not prepared to manage forest lands. That's just not what they do. And they're also under some financial duress, which is not a surprise during this period. So what we would like to do is really get the property into modern, up-to-date management, make sure it is protected for the long term, because it's difficult to know what the goals of FSA will be in the future. So that's why this is really important to get it under much more permanent, stronger protection with good management.
Well, I know that Jay Jean, who is my son and also the deputy director of the West New York Land Conservancy, calls this one of the most important projects he's ever done or ever expects to do. So it's pretty exciting that you guys are working together on this. And I hope we can pull it off. We're going to put up a link here where people can donate money because I know there's a fundraising campaign going on right now. Let's talk about something slightly different. The condition of the world, and we have climate change, we have biodiversity collapse. What do you folks see as happening and what's coming next, and what should we be doing? That's an easy question, right?
That's a very difficult question. I think it's really, we're just guessing, and the best I can say is if we each try to take care of our own ground and pressure the powers that be to take care of the land on a bigger, a larger scale, that's probably the best we can do. It does seem like the coronavirus has made people rethink their values and priorities, and I think that part is good. I'm sorry for the lives that have been lost. And I think we have a significant set of struggles ahead of us related to the coronavirus as well as global climate change and many other issues.
Jonathan, you want to add something?
Sure. The world right now, the world is changing very fast, and there's the climate change and also other aspects of global change are kind of combining things such as non-native species invasions. Most of our tree species in Western New York are at risk because of invasive species and some of the other aspects of global change. So it's really critical that people do try to get involved at whatever level works. And also, though, it is important to preserve these properties so that species do have places to go when they have, for example, if they have to move north or respond to various kinds of changes from invasive species. It's good to have high quality, pristine properties where we can keep these species around. So that's kind of where the College Lodge comes in.
Well,
I think the changes are going to be pretty difficult in the future, but if we're prepared and are ready to adapt, and we can make it through.
Well, I mean, it's important to have hope, and I think folks like you are working hard to educate people and to inform people and to help protect places. And we can do it, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of planning, and it's going to take a lot of money. We should not give up. And these kinds of projects are really what make us whole in a real sense. And our future depends on being able to protect these places. And I'm so grateful that there's folks like you out there working on these kinds of projects. I've known you both for a couple of years now and really admire the work that you do. And I want to thank you. And I think,
thank you.
Thank you.
And I think with that, I'd like to wrap up the conversation, and we'll stay in touch. And thanks so much for visiting with us today.
Thank you, and take care.